Welcome, guys. Welcome to Saints TV. Welcome to the round 19 preview against Melbourne Saturday night, Marvel Stadium. It's gonna be an interesting game. It's gonna be an exciting game. I'm very excited to go. Spent the last week in Queensland, so unfortunately didn't get to go to the win on the weekend against the Dogs, but back now, and coming back to Melbourne at a good time to watch the boys, because I think that um, based on last week, I'm pretty excited by turning up to this game on Saturday and seeing what we can do to a slow, sluggish sort of Melbourne team that played pretty well against West Coast. Got to say that, but their season overall, after finishing, a prelim last year, potential top four, top two team this year, and they're 17th or 16th on the ladder right now, beneath us, is a massive drop off. And a lot of people are talking about maybe last year was the aberration. Maybe that was a lucky year for Melbourne, and maybe this is more towards what we should be expecting from them. I'm not too sure, but at the end of the day, we've had a bit of a disappointing season ourselves, obviously with Richo and the on-field performances and the ladder position. But I think we've turned a corner. I think that Brett Ratten's looks to have won the guys over last week, and they seem to be playing with a lot more freedom. On Sunday in particular, you could see Ratten putting his stamp on the game, and players like Gresham and Billings and Loney and these X-factor sort of players that have something that a lot of other players in our team don't. The players that can go to that next level and take the game on. I think under Ratten, they're going to excel. We may concede a bigger score than usual, but I think that we kick bigger scores, and I think that's been our big issue this season. So if we can kick over 100 points against Melbourne again, we've beaten them the last two times. I'm very confident that we can get the job done this time. Before we go into the actual game, let's talk about the ins and outs, which have been, I guess it's a bit of a surprise for me, to be honest. Ben Long, who's been in and out of the team all season, he's shown some things. He played well against Geelong, and was rested last week due to family problems. He wasn't dropped, despite what some people said last week. But Matty Parker coming out, I thought Matty Parker had a solid game last week. I thought he did some really nice things. He took a mark that should have been paid in the forward line. He kicked a goal, laid some big tackles, chase all day. He was dropped the week before that, so he's come in and out, of the team in the last fortnight. So I wouldn't do his confidence all that good, but there must have been something there for Ratten to say, sorry, but you've got to be dropped. Long, you're in. It's a like for like. When you look at it, Long's got pace. He's a marking player. He's a pressure forward. So I guess there's no way you bring in Long and who else comes out of the team? Nick Hind would have been another one, potentially Langlands, but it's good to see Ratten backing in a player that's only played one game. I think that's a positive for Ratten, because I think one thing we can criticise about Richo is that he wasn't shy of bringing someone in for one game and dropping them immediately, and stunting them of any sort of confidence or continuity in their performance. But Langlands, I think he did enough last week. He looks like a player. Give him more game time. I've seen that with a lot of our other players, Hunter Clark especially. The more time we give them, Caulfield, Pattons, it's good to see these sort of players standing up. And I think that they're better for the run. The more games we get into this team, into those players in particular, the better we are long term. And I think our list is starting to get into a very nice position. I was reading an article today, and it was comparing, it was saying that we're in a better position than Sydney, we're in a better position than Adelaide even, and they were talking about, Sydney and Adelaide are above us on the ladder, but you look at their top-end talent, it's all 29 to 34 age bracket. They rarely have that young talent that's coming through, whereas we're the opposite end of the scale. Our team is very young. It's, I think, the second youngest in the league behind Gold Coast. Even Carlton is older than us, and people are wondering why Carlton seem to have looked like they've improved. Maybe they've got that demographic there already. Maybe they're not as young as people think. But we've been forced to play a lot of our young players earlier than expected because of the injuries we've had. And I think that's a bit of a blessing in disguise. You see Brisbane, who went through the same thing last year. They had a bunch of injuries, played a lot of their youngsters, and this year they're second on the ladder, and those youngsters are the ones that look the more mature, the more ready-made players. So I think when you get Patton, you get Caulfield, you get Clark, you get Battle, you get all these players in, and you give them games. It's only going to be better when we get the likes of Hanbury back, the likes of Jack Stephen, and we'll talk about that now. I mentioned, and it's true that the club said that if Webster, Battle, and Hanbury got through training on Thursday, they'd be up for selection. That doesn't mean that they're going to be automatic walk-ups to the team, because when you look at the team, 3 players coming out after a winning performance like that would be very hard done by. So I think that bringing the one change in, none of them included, means they all probably play at Sandy, I guess, or most of them will play at Sandy, get a week there with Stuv, with Jack Stephen, and that means that they'll be very likely to play in Adelaide next week, which is, I think, a game that I'm tempted to go to. It's away in Adelaide. I've never been to Adelaide, and I'd be super keen to go and see Adelaide Oval on Saturday night. I think it's a very winnable game. We'll see how we go this Saturday, but I think if we win against Melbourne, and Adelaide have looked very shaky recently, there's a chance that we can go there and give them a shake, which we haven't done in a long time. Let's go through some of the AFL points. I read them every week. In terms of win-loss, we've won 7. Melbourne have won 5. Our percentage is 82.9. Theirs is 80. We've kicked a bigger score by 21 points. So our attack is better and our defence is better. What this means for St Kilda, there's a chance for the Saints to hit the off-season with momentum. Only one of the remaining 5 teams they face sit in the top 8 currently, and that's Adelaide, who are struggling. Putting a few wins on the board will bring positivity to Moorabbin. The stat, St Kilda hit triple figures in its win over the Bulldogs last Sunday. It was the first time it had accomplished that since last year's round 17 win over Carlton. The matchup, it's important, is Jack Loney versus Neville Jetta. Pint-sized forward Loney showed why St Kilda missed him so much against the Dogs, coming up hot in the opening quarter to help spur the Saints to a win. Melbourne will want lockdown defender Jetta to get the job done and nullify the feisty left-footer. It's a big week for Hunter Clark. After a stuttering start to his career, the silky midfielder is showing the elite traits that saw him drafted at pick number 7 in 2017. Continuing in this vein of form and finishing the season well should give him belief heading into 2020, which would be important considering he looked down on confidence earlier this year. He's looking very high on confidence this year, and he's been phenomenal in the last 2 weeks. Big call. Tempers to flare at halftime with Josh Bruce and Nathan Jones to instigate an all-in brawl. There could be one. And prediction is Melbourne by 11 points. Although when you look at the poll, when you vote who wins, 70% on the AFL website say St Kilda, 30% say Melbourne. So, and the same with the odds. In terms of the odds, we were like $2.70 or something at the start of the week, and Melbourne were firm favourites. After the Sunday game, we're now $2, Melbourne $1.82. So I wouldn't be surprised if, come Saturday night, we are close to favourites for this game. In terms of stats, Melbourne average higher in everything apart from tackles. They disposals, clearances, it's all very close though. Contested possessions, hit-outs, obviously hit-outs with Max Gawn, but Max Gawn v Rowan Marshall is going to be very interesting. Well, I think Rowan Marshall did well on Gawn last time out when we beat them, but I think this time out is going to be even more of an even match, with Marshall being close to one of the best players in the league since halfway through the season, really. We've beaten them the last 2 times and 3 of the last 5. So we beat them in round 1 2017. They beat us. So we've beaten them the last 2 times by 2 points in 2018 and by 40 points in round 5 this season, when we all lost our shit and thought we were on the march. Obviously, the last couple of times we've played them has been at the MCG, so the bigger grounds gives us a bit more room to switch the ball and use that, expose their slow midfield. I think this time around, being at Marvel, it might actually be a closer game, and it might bring the scores down a little bit. But I'm hoping that from Sunday's performance, we just take the game on and we just back ourselves to beat Melbourne, because if we can do that, I think 2 wins under Ratten, he's got to be close to getting the job. And all this talk of Ross Lyon looking to come back, Brad Scott looking to come back, Mick Malthouse putting his hand up. Those are 3 people I don't want coming anywhere near this club. I just want Rats to do what he does best and just coach an exciting team. I want to kick scores. I want to take the game on. You don't want to die wandering on the footy field, do you? You don't want to play a conservative game. And I think that's one thing we were guilty of doing under Richo is we were too conservative when the game was there to be had and there to be taken. We didn't take the risk and go for it. I think this time around with Ratten, I think he's going to give us that license to do that a bit more and take risks. We may make a lot of mistakes, but I think long term, I think we'll kick bigger scores, which means we'll more than not we'll win more games. And against Melbourne, they've struggled to kick scores this season. They've struggled to really, negate a high-scoring team. So if we can come out and kick a bag in that first quarter like we did against the Dogs and set the tone, I think we're in for a good night. And Saturday night against Melbourne, perfect night to just get a good win at Marvel. That would take us to 8-10, I think it is. And statistically, we are still possible at making the 8. If we win every game for the rest of the season, there's still a chance that we can make the 8. I know it's very unlikely, but again, Adelaide are the only team we face who are in the 8 for the rest of the season. So if we get over Melbourne and we face Adelaide and get them, we finish the season against North, I think we've got Carlton again, we've got Sydney as well, Fremantle. So there's winnable games there. Most of them are at Marvel. So I back us in to get some good wins there. Let's go through some of these comments before I close this off. Craig says, Parker, a joke. It's a bit sad. Tim says, Parker, very stiff. He creates so much off the ball. Brandon White will surely ask for a trade at season's end. Cooper says, fucking over these idiot football club selectors. All of Battle, Stephen, Hannahs, Webster, and White, all in the 2s. Yet Ben Long can just waltz back in. Absolute bull. Thoughts? Battle hasn't played in a few weeks. I think he needs a run. Stephen, he played last week and only got 21, and he looks like he needs a bit more of a run in terms of his fitness. Hannah's, same goes to him. And Webster's played in the seconds a bit. Would have been good to have him back in, but it looks like Ratten's backing the back line that played last week and did a good job against the Dogs. Caroline says, hope we don't end up with either Lyon or Brad Scott as coach for 2020. Should be Ratten. Marcus says, I thought Parker's efforts were great last week. Christina says, don't bag Richo. Focus on the now. No worries, Christina. Thanks for that. Not bagging him out. I'm just comparing his style to Ratten. Not bagging. Dave says, looks to me like we are on tanking. We are tanking now. Where's all the spoken about ins? Remember the spoken about ins? We said that they would be available for selection. So they are clearly available for selection. They've been selected at Sandy. So that rings true. They're all going to play. And hopefully that means they're all going to come in next week and face Adelaide. Sam says, Stephen out because of mental health. Webster out because of injury. Might be back this week. Hannah's rested, might be back. Play less than 10 games in the last 18 months. Was expected to be rested. White, not too sure. Kerry says, I agree we need to keep Rats. I don't think Lyon or Scott is going to be the right person for the team we've got. Marcus says, what do you reckon of a finals run with our coming games? Very unlikely, but still a chance. I think we just go for it. Nothing to lose, guys. Let's just go for it. We're only, I think, a game and a huge amount of percentage out of the 8. Just go for it. Let's just try and smash Melbourne and move on from there and see what happens. If teams above us start dropping points and we start gaining points and belief comes into the team that they can do something and make a late run, then that's only going to make it more exciting for us. And it's just good to get to round 19 and still have a mathematical chance of making finals. We haven't had that in years, so that's a good place to be in. Even with the form we've had recently and the whole Richo thing, we're still mathematically a chance at round 19, which we haven't had, in years and years. So that's a good change. Dean says, Parker very stiff. His 1%ers are invaluable. Paul says, Webster hasn't played for months. Stephen Hannahs need fitness. White is the one of interest. Who's he upset? I like him. Hunter Clark coming good now, says Daniel. If we tackle, we will win. Jeremy is asking, where's Hanbury? Clearly they didn't think he was fit enough. Giving him a run at Sandy. Hopefully comes in next week. Jason's, hopefully we play the same as last week and keep at least one forward inside 50 at all times. Made a huge difference. Completely agree with you there, Jason. We didn't have a crowded forward line like the previous weeks. It was either Membry or Bruce one out, sometimes Akers, and even Nunes pushing forward. So I'm excited to see that forward structure again and see how Long comes in and takes up that Parker role. Lockie says Rats is the best coach for us. He was great He has a great fast-moving game plan. If our club elects another, I would be very disappointed. Bryce says, not sure why Long deserves to be in. How long does it take for Brandon White to become a staple in the team? He must be doing something that coaches need him to get better at. Leonie says, so happy Rui had another boy. Yeah, that's side note. If you haven't heard, Nick Royalt had his third son, Edward. So that's 3 potential father-son revolts in the team. So that's incredibly exciting. We could have 3 Rewalts in the forward line in the next 19, 20 years, which is ridiculous. So hopefully they all become superstar full forwards for the club. No pressure, guys, but we're expecting a lot from you. Jeremy, actually, upon further thought, Ratten is making it count. Winds of change. Stephen, good trade bait. Apparently Geelong are looking at getting Jack Stephen or putting in another bid for him. But, would you guys be willing to give up Stephen to Geelong if we got Bradley Hill from Fremantle? That's one thing that, I think I'd take that. Brad Hill is 24 years old. He's at the peak of his powers. He had 39 disposals last week or the week before. He's in career best form. He could be on one wing with Billings on another and maybe getting, like a Whitfield or Caniglio in the middle of the ground. You could have a Billings and a Brad Hill on either wing. Could be super exciting. Maybe Jack Stephen isn't part of the future. I'm not sure. But if we get a pick for him or we get another player for him, who knows, what type of offer the club's going to consider. But we'll have to wait and see. Christina says, should have beaten Freo the first time. That's 100% true. We let them get the jump on us. And hopefully next time we play them in a couple of weeks, we don't let that happen again. Michael says, wonder how Rowan Marshall will go in the Brownlow. I think he'll poll, maybe 9 votes or so, but which is a great effort for a ruckman and for a young ruckman like him in a losing team. I don't think that matters. I think he'll poll very well for the best and fairest and finish top 2. At the moment, I feel like he'd be close to leading it with Billings. But yeah, if he keeps up his form for the next 5 to 6 weeks, I think that he'll be close to winning the best and fairest, which is a very good thing. We haven't had a ruckman win the best and fairest for St Kilda in a long time. I might leave it there, guys. Thanks for watching. Comment your tip. How much do you think we'll win by? Do you think we'll win? Are you confident? I'm actually going into this with a lot of confidence. I think that Melbourne are struggling. I think that, they put in a big effort last week. 6-day break for them. They played in Darwin in the heat. They lost a close game. I think that takes a lot of energy and belief out of them. And I think that with that, newfound belief that we gained from Sunday's game and from Brett Ratten at the helm and the fast, moving sort of game plan, I think that will exploit Melbourne's midfield. Melbourne's very good at the inside. They've got Viney. They've got Clayton Oliver. They've got Brayshaw. They've got all these players that get the ball. They have no one on the outside to do anything with it. And I think that we're a bit of the opposite. We don't have a lot of the inside bulls, but when the ball comes out, we have a mosquito fleet that kind of go and run. And last week we saw that exploit an inside sort of team like the Dogs. I think we can do that again this week. And the Dogs, I think they accounted for Melbourne recently as well, and we accounted for the Dogs. So hopefully our good form against Melbourne continues. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. This will be uploaded on Spotify, on YouTube, Instagram as well, potentially. So if you're on all those platforms and you haven't had a chance to watch it in full yet, it'll be on there for listening and your viewing pleasure, although I wouldn't say watching me is any sort of pleasure. But thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you Saturday night, hopefully to talk about an awesome win. See you guys. Go Saints.